What's going on, everyone? It's the My Aggie Nation podcast back again. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle, and we also have what Robert Cessna would refer to as the other Eagleettes. That's Alex Miller over there. Alex, what's going on, man?
Hey, Travis. It's Thursday afternoon, and it's dry here in College Station, so hopefully it stays that way. We got a full weekend on the diamond ahead of us, so we'll see how things shake out on the weather front.
Yeah, I know. I was getting a little worried about that. It was looking like it was going to be rain solid until like next Friday. But the Aggies do have an important baseball series coming up. It's the last one of the season. It's vital. They need to win this. They need to there's a lot of scenarios we'll go over later, but they need to win games this weekend to be able to make it to Hoover in the SEC tournament. I got a chance to talk with Bryce Blaum a little bit as they go into what will be senior weekend. So here's a little bit of my conversation with Bryce Blaum. Hey, man, it's finally senior weekend.
It's kind of bittersweet, you know. Last year we were supposed to experience senior day and just getting it taken away, and it was tough, and then not knowing really if we were going to have it this year. But thankfully we are, and it stinks because our parents can't come on the field and experience it with us. But I know my mom's going to be happy. My brother's going to be here. He actually just graduated from LSU, so it's kind of ironic that we're playing them.
Yeah. What is it? Is there something a little more to it that it is such an important series for what y'all want to do to keep going instead of maybe just being a end of the year doesn't mean anything? Is there something more to it because of that?
Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to stop playing. Want to make it to Hoover and make a run at it and hopefully win Hoover and get into a regional. So there's a lot on the line this weekend, and what a poetic weekend to do it on. We have so many seniors and so many guys who have been in the program for so long that we can achieve something on a special weekend like it.
You of a lot of people, maybe you and Ray, have a pretty interesting just whole career story. Kind of when you look back on it, especially with what the last 2 years have brought. I mean, what kind of sticks out? How do you kind of characterize your collegiate career coming into this weekend?
You know, it didn't go necessarily as planned. Obviously, out of high school, when you commit to a school, you think you're going to play right away, and then you get to a big Division I school, and you realize everybody there is just as good. And thankfully, Coach Childers, Coach Sealy, and Coach Bolt at the time gave me the opportunity to make up for a mistake of not coming here out of high school. And so really being here the past 4 years has been the biggest blessing I could ever ask for, being able to graduate from this university, which I actually walk for graduation tomorrow morning. It's just thankful is the word that comes to mind. Thankful for the people I've met and the relationships I've developed with people.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of times during baseball season, baseball guys don't get to take part in graduations and whatnot. Is that add a little special kick to the weekend?
Like I said, my mom, dad, and brother are going to be here. Unfortunately, I wish my grandpa could be here. That's my best friend, but we don't want him around a ton of people with everything still going on. But it's bittersweet. You know, I wish he could be there, but thankful that the family members that are coming will be there.
Yeah, for sure. What's kind of the key to the weekend? What's the mantra heading in this weekend?
Touch home plate more than they do.
I like it. By any means necessary.
By any means necessary. If we do that, I think the scoreboard will reflect in a good way.
Yeah, I think it will too. I think that's how it works. That's awesome. I mean, and it's kind of regional feel, right? Like, especially with the pitching round, it's, you know, y'all got to fight to do whatever it needs to win a game, and then you'll worry about the next day, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all hands on deck every single day to put us in our best spot. We got to sweep. Obviously, there's different scenarios, but a sweep is really what we need to accomplish, and we're going to use everybody on the roster, all 30 guys that are on the SEC roster, and especially pitching. Guys might throw every single day if we have to.
Thanks so much for Bryce Blaum for giving us a few minutes of his time. We'll be back with more My Aggie Nation podcast here in just a few seconds.
Welcome back. You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Travis L. Brown. We're missing our third man, Zach Taylor, this week. He'll be back next week, hopefully. But Travis, how's it going?
That's going to be a really weird 3-man weave that we do after this podcast is over. It's just going to be you and me passing the ball back to each other before we miss a layup.
Probably. It's kind of like when you juggle with two balls, it's just juggling with two balls is weird. Have you ever tried that?
I cannot wait to make that into a GIF. Like, that is going to happen. So anyway, before you give me any other fodder to make fun of you with, there's baseball this weekend.
There is baseball this weekend, and it's a big series for the Aggies. We just heard from Bryce Blaum, A&M's infielder, and it's kind of do or die for the Aggies. They've got to at least win this series if they want to have a shot to make the SEC tournament. That's not even guaranteed. And they're facing an LSU's team who is one game away from securing a bid in Hoover, but really needs wins to secure their spot in the field of 64 for the NCAA tournament. So, Travis, let's just start. Can we run through the scenarios of what it'll take for A&M to make the SEC tournament and just where the Aggies stand in the SEC standings right now? Right. So LSU is a game up.
So there's kind of 4 teams at play here, and they're all playing each other this weekend. LSU is a game up on A&M and Auburn. A&M and Auburn are tied, and Missouri is a game back of A&M and Auburn. So it's LSU, then A&M and Auburn, then Missouri.
We should preface with 12 teams make the SEC tournament, in case you weren't aware.
12 of the 14, correct. So if A&M sweeps this weekend, they control their own destiny in that regard. If they sweep, they're in Hoover. Now, if they need to win more games than Auburn, because of course they're even heading into this series. So they need, and Auburn owns the head-to-head tiebreaker. So they need to win more games than Auburn. If they only win 2 games, they can't have Missouri sweep, because that would put Missouri ahead of them and put them into the they would have made up those games. So basically, the moral of the story is A&M needs to sweep this weekend. Now, if they only win 2 games, they have to win at least 2 games. If they only win 2 games, then they don't need Missouri to sweep, and they need but they need Missouri to win 2 and Auburn just to win 1. So, moral of the story is if they can win all 3 games against an LSU team that is not their normal selves this year, that'll be the best case scenario for them.
Gotcha. Looking at the matchup in particular, just hearing previews from Rob Childress, the players, especially from Rob Childress, it seems like pitching is going to be all hands on deck this weekend. Dustin Signs slated to start Thursday night. Got to fly in here. Dustin Signs slated to start Thursday night, but from there it's TBA, and it's kind of a mystery where A&M might go with this. We've seen the TBA on the Sundays the last 2 weeks, but now it's really Friday and Saturday games 2 and 3. Travis, what are you kind of expecting how A&M's going to handle things on the mound?
Well, it's going to play out a lot like a loser's bracket of a regional. If you lose that game, then you're kind of scrambling for pitching, and you have to win. It's a must-win scenario. So they're only really throwing Dustin Signs out there to say that if Dustin Signs gets rocked around in the first couple innings, they're probably going to have to go straight to Bryce Miller or Chandler Joe's walk. And if something happens there, then they're going to go to the other guy. And so it's just going to be a constant stream of some of their best arms, because they have to win ball games. And so I think that's why you have the TBD, is because who knows if they get in a situation where there's a couple of lefties, they might come back with Chris Webber and bring him out of the pen. It's anything goes. It's like the waning games of a World Series and Pro Ball. It's like going through the losers bracket of a regional. You have to win ball games, and so you have to put your best arms out there. And so they'll reassess where the staff is each day to decide who is going to start. I mean, you might see some scenarios where he's used Mason Ornelas and Nathan Detmer even a little bit as like an opener type situation where you throw a pitcher out there to go through the batting order once, and then you kind of use the pin, or you bring a more long reliever starter type in behind that guy to finish out the next 7 or 8 innings. So we'll see how it goes, but it's mostly they're doing that just because they don't necessarily know what the staff and the available pitchers are going to look like day to day through the series as they try to do everything they can to win each individual game.
Gotcha. Looking at LSU, like we said, LSU fighting to get into the NCAA tournament. They're 11-16 in SEC play. 13 is kind of the magical number of SEC wins you kind of need to make the field of 64. So, LSU, they're not looking to let this series get away from them. Nope. They need wins just as much as A&M does. Honestly, more, because honestly, LSU has more to play for than A&M at this point.
Right. LSU is an interesting case because they come in with an RPI at 21. And yet, if you look at most of the projected fields of 64 and some other publications, there are a lot of times that first 4 left out. So to be 21 in RPI, and you mentioned it with how many losses they've gathered in conference play is really setting them back. But they're in good positioning RPI wise to make the field. They just have to win some ball games. And so, yeah, this is going to be a crucial series for them too, because if they can come up and sweep A&M, that'll push them the win column up a little bit more, and that might push them into that field of 64 heading into the weekend, heading into the conference tournament. I mean,
so Travis, I guess the question is, what's it going to take for A&M to pull off at least a series win? And really a sweep is what A&M truly needs.
They have to have good pitching. Good pitching has been kind of the bane of the season so far. And it's not that they don't have good pitchers. It's been the little free passes and mistakes that have plagued them, because as they've shown, almost pulled off, I believe, in Auburn, you can have a team hit 6 solo shots and still be in a game. You just can't have a team hit 6 3-run homers, because then the game's out of hand. And they've steadily seen their numbers drop in walks, strikeout to walk ratio, and walks hits per innings pitched. I know the mantra of this pitching staff ever since Rob Childress has been here has been to lead the SEC in strikeout to walk ratio and walks per 9 innings. And they're just not doing that this year. Plus, they're hitting a lot of batters. And that doesn't really necessarily come down to good pitching or not. The walks do, because you might be nibbling a little bit more against good hitters, but the hit batters, that's something that just shouldn't be happening. And if they can prevent those free passes on the base paths, even if they do make a few mistakes and leave a few sliders or fastballs hanging out over the middle of the plate that get rocked, they can still be in the game, because the offense hasn't necessarily been terrible for the Aggies over the last few series. So they've been able to put some runs across the plate. They just have to have the pitching and defense that backs up and gives them the negative run support to help them win some ball games.
Gotcha. Travis, like we said, A&M, they've got to win the series at least to extend their season another week. If this is it for A&M, you wrote a column in today's paper, just kind of looking at the season holistically. Is inconsistent kind of the word that comes to mind if this is it for the Aggies, if this is the last series of their season?
Yeah. Oh, hey, look, Dallas the Beagle wants to make an appearance in the podcast. What's up? Yes, this I think inconsistency is the best way to describe it, because as I look back at this pitching staff and these hitters, there has been worse lineups that A&M has had in the last 5 seasons. There has been worse performances from pitchers. It's just that they haven't been able to put together a good pitching performance and a good hitting performance at the same time. There is And then you add into that the walks and the hit batters and little free passes like that aren't necessarily indicators of this guy has good fastball stuff. This guy has a good slider. This guy is a good pitcher that can project to the next level. It's just issuing free passes. And I kind of put that in a different category. They had the ability and the talent to be, and I kind of have to agree with the quote that I used from Childress this weekend, where he said, it's kind of like a game of Yahtzee. If you shuffle this deck up and you put all these teams back in the cup and roll them all out again, starting the season over, things could have shaken out a lot differently. There was a lot of games that were 1-mistake, 2-mistake games from A&M that would have maybe shifted the tide one way or the other. That being said, they're in the situation that they are now, and it's compounded by the fact that last year they were projected, and a lot of people had them as maybe an Omaha team with Asa Lacy on the mound, with Christian Rowe on the mound, with Zach DeLoach, the reigning Cape Cod League MVP of the time at the time, who also got drafted, provided some firepower. We didn't really get to see this healthy Will Frizzell like we have last year or this year last year, because the roster was shortened, or the schedule was shortened. So yeah, I think it makes it doubly interesting because there could have been so much potential last year, and then to come back this year and for it to be kind of the dud that it is, it's not only interesting for the fan just watching, but it's interesting to see that Rob Childress's contract is up this summer, and hasn't been any movement from the people that I've talked to either way towards making a decision one way or another on that. And you have to go back and say, well, if Asa Lacy is who we thought he was going to be last year, and what if the Aggies make it and host a super regional? What if they make it to Omaha? What if Rob Childress gets his first Omaha win with that staff? What kind of position you think if Rob Childress and the Aggies get a win in Omaha last year, he's getting an extension. So that COVID season really makes things interesting when you think about what could have been compared to the way that this season turned out this year.
For sure. Well, like we've said, lots to play for, not only for the Aggies, but the LSU Tigers this weekend. Travis will be out there all weekend at Olsen Field, giving you the latest coverage. So be sure to follow him on Twitter and check theeagle.com for your latest updates on Aggie baseball. Let's move to the other diamond, softball, A&M softball. They are headed to the Norman Regional this weekend. That's a tough draw for the Aggies. They're playing the host of the number 1 overall seed, Oklahoma. A&M's had tough luck up in Norman before, whether it be super regional, regional. OU is just a tough team to beat. Patty Gasso squad, they are always a national powerhouse. A&M, they're the number 3 seed in that regional. They're going to face Wichita State Friday at 5:00. History's on the side of the Aggies, though. They've never lost to the Shockers in softball. So that's good news for them, especially considering A&M's lost 7 straight games heading into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you mentioned it too. It's, if they can get past Wichita State, that's a pretty tough draw. Of course, Norman, suburb of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is the home of the softball Women's College World Series. And as much as you think of like women's basketball programs like Baylor or UConn, with the kind of crowds that they draw, with the atmosphere, with how people follow and are crazy about like women's basketball in those situations, that's Oklahoma to softball, because you have such a rich softball environment up there, with the College World Series being right down the street. And it's going to be, probably going to be a lot of fans there. It's going to be rowdy, and it's going to be a good environment against a really, really tough team. They're going to have to work some magic probably to escape out of that regional.
Yeah, something to note, the NCAA, they just lifted the attendance capacities for postseason play. That was the thing that they were going to limit to 50%. Now it's at 100, and OU said, all right, let's go. They're at 100%, and you nailed it. I mean, that is a fantastic atmosphere for college softball at OU. So yeah, if A&M gets past that, first game against Wichita State. Saturday afternoon is going to be tough. A&M's probably going to have to play near perfect to pull off an upset. And even if they do, they'd have to beat OU probably at least one more time. Mm-hmm. So, it's a tough road ahead for the Aggies. I guess never say never, but odds are OU, it's going to be chalk, and they're probably on their way back to stadium up I-35 in Oklahoma City later this month, into June.
Yeah,
we're still in May. Mm-hmm. They all run together.
What is time anymore?
Exactly. Well, before we go, Travis, let's just take a look around Aggie land, see what else is going on. A&M men's golf. They came up short by one stroke in the Albuquerque Regional. They finished sixth. They're not going to be able to make it to the national tournament. That's a tough ending for a really good season on the links.
What a tough ending for both the men's and women's team, or at least Courtney Dow from the women's side, because she was fighting in the SEC tournament, I believe, and that got canceled. Was it the regional
in Baton Rouge?
Right. And that got canceled because of weather.
Flooding over there.
Right, where they took just the top seeds, and then the men's squad that went missed by a stroke. Just kind of a tough all around season for the women's squad, or excuse me, for the golf teams.
Yeah, for sure. Sam Bennett, he had a fantastic season. Got a chance to write a story on him before he played in the Valero Open. They went through the coaching change, and Corton stepped in as the interim head coach. We'll see if he gets named the official head coach. But yeah, A&M had a really talented golf team this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then of course, women's tennis falls in the Sweet 16, but men's tennis in the Elite Eight to face, Elite Eight? Yes, to face Florida, who they've already lost to twice this season.
Number one.
Yeah, number one. So that'll be an interesting matchup as well.
For sure.
With tennis, very interesting. They were a team kind of like baseball in that they were rolling through the SEC. The men's tennis team was rolling through the SEC slate last year, beat Florida last year, and was heading towards maybe winning an SEC title, and could have been what Steve Denton said could have been a Final Four team last year. They were lucky. They got Val Vachereau, who's a top 10 player. They got Hattie Habib, who's also a top 10 player, back, some veteran experience to try to make a run at this thing again, because those are two guys that probably have aspirations and will be able to join the Pro Tour when they're done with their college teams. And they came back. They've struggled with some injuries this season, and so they've had to play some younger guys. But it's kind of a grudge match for some of these older guys, because it's them fighting against what they lost last season and seeing if they can kind of check off that what they called unfinished business from last year. So it's an interesting team to watch, because they have some things that they're fighting for from last year.
For sure. Speaking of tennis.
Go ahead.
Travis.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of tennis, I know this is an A&M sports podcast, but the A&M Consolidated High School Tigers, they have a doubles team that is favored to win the state tournament this weekend in San Antonio. And they won their first match. They're playing in the semifinals. So could have a state champion here in College Station.
Alex Miller dropping high school bombs in the My Aggie Nation podcast. What do you know? Hey, let's close out with this. I know we didn't talk about it, but while I was off the other day, you listened to A&M athletic director Ross Bjork's town hall, and he had some takes about the college football playoff. Now, well, first off, he said that they're expecting to go back 100% for Kyle Field this fall. So everyone can be excited about that. But go into a little bit of what he had to say about that college football playoff and expansion.
Yeah, a really thorough answer or question. There were 2-3 parts to it, honestly, from A&M fan that messaged in. Bjork was pretty straight up. It's inevitable that the college football playoff is going to expand. It's a matter of when, not if. There's a lot of logistics that go into it. They have the contract through the 25-26 season. So that's one hurdle they have to work through. People want that change now. But when money's on the line, that gets a little hairy. So that's definitely one major hurdle. The other thing is, how are you going to set it up? We've heard that there's models between 6, 8, 12, 10, 16 teams. What exactly is the best model? Bjork said either 8 or 12 was kind of what he was thinking. He made it pretty clear that it sounds like the 5 Power 5 conferences plus one group of 5 team will have an automatic bid, which
conference
seems
champions.
to be conference champion. Yes. So the 5 Power 5 conference champion plus the highest ranked group of 5 team will have automatic bids to the playoff. So that's 16 that's 6 teams. 6 seems too little for him. 8, that gives you 2 at-large teams. He was saying 12 though, because then you have 6 automatic bids plus 6 at-large bids, kind of makes it a little even. Honestly, that could open the door for 2 group of 5 teams to potentially make it in a year where maybe 2 teams go undefeated. So, there's a lot of logistics that go into it. He seems to think that it's inevitable. Like we said, 8 or 12 seems to be where things are trending. And he supports the whole, let's play him here on campus, at least that first round. The one thing that I thought was interesting though, he made it clear that college football is not going back down from 12 regular season games. Mm-hmm. Too much money on the line. When you think about it, we saw that last year, how schools lost a lot of money. The SEC yesterday distributing $23 million to each school. How does that affect conference championship games? How does that affect the start of the season? Does it start earlier? Does the season go longer into January? I do think it's interesting though, that they talk about the concern of playing 15 or 16 games. How many high school football teams in Texas play 15 or 16 games when they're playing all the way through to the state championship? Not to mention, they've already played 1 or 2 scrimmages before the season starts. So you're already playing 17, 18 games when you have to make it all the way. That is no different than having to play 12 plus a championship game plus 3 more in the playoff. And honestly, that's only 2 teams that are playing 16 games.
Yeah, back about 5 years ago, that's an argument that Mike Leach made when someone asked him about playoff expansion. Is he said that high school football in Texas plays that many games and they power through. So why can't college? And they have to go to class and do all kinds of things like that. So that is one argument out there. To me, the difference between 8 and 12 is what you want to get out of the college regular season, because 8, I think, still keeps that excitement of week to week, what the rankings are, each game kind of matters type thing. Once you get to 12, that's going to be more emphasis on the postseason. It's going to be more like college basketball, where kind of who cares about the regular season as long as March Madness starts up, because then the excitement's going to be, okay, well, can one of these group of 5s make it through? Do we have the Cinderellas? Do we have the lower 10, 11, 8, 9 seed that's going to burst through and make it to the championship game? So I think 8 is a good spot, because how many times have you seen that? It just seems like in the playoff era, there's like 5, maybe 6 teams, if you take out conference champions and things like that, that really can make an argument for being the best in the country. And 6 is maybe 2014 is the one time that there was 6. But I think at that point, you might water it down a little too much, because there is that excitement in that pontification every Tuesday when those rankings roll out, that I know causes a lot of ire, but also makes it exciting and intriguing and different than a lot of other things. So to me, I don't really have a problem with 4. Because of that same reason, but there's more money to be made.
It has worked.
It really has. I mean, I know A&M fans this year would argue that they should be in, but really when you look at if A&M was the only team really that had an argument that got left outside.
They weren't beating Alabama.
No. So yeah, I think that 4 is not bad. 8 at the most. I think 12 is too many. I do like that. I do have a pull between that excitement and intrigue and arguing between teams each week and rewarding a conference championship because I think that there's something to that. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter what's the best system for declaring a champion. An 8-team tournament will generate more money because they're going to have to get a new broadcast contract, and it's all about money. It 100% is all about money. So whatever makes the most money without too greatly jeopardizing the health and safety of the athletes, that's what's going to happen.
You are correct, Travis. That is what's going to happen. And I think that's all we've got for this week's episode of the My Nation podcast.
I have no more.
I think you have some Panera to eat. Is that right, Travis?
Panera to eat, yes. And apparently a dog to feed. So
hopefully she hadn't eaten your lunch yet.
No, she might have.
All right. Honestly, she might have. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us for another edition of the My Aggie Nation podcast. We'll be back next week. For Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. See you next time.
It seems like every day, everything just has a way to burst at the seams. But if we don't watch what we're doing, our hearts will get ruined by silly things. Good love ain't easy, girl, we know that's true. And if we wanna keep it, we gotta watch everything that we do, yeah. I wanna make sure, my baby, make sure you're sticking with